This is Digital Perspectives with Brad Kimes. Subscribe for new content notifications. Now, here's Brad Kimes. Come on in.
Welcome back to the show. You guys can follow me on Twitter at BackupBradleyAbove on the top of the screen and everything that we're talking about here today. Okay, so what I want to do is talk about some comments here that were made by CNBC about Powell, Jerome Powell from the Fed, and then we're going to talk about the idea of dumping the dollar and the idea of the dollar itself as a global reserve currency running into the Triffin dilemma issue, which is when a global currency is also a national currency, and it runs into problems when you make decisions that are best globally for their global reserve status, and the other currencies that are pegged to it, or the exchange rate basis of that, you make decisions globally that normally hurt the national side of that currency, the currency holder, and vice versa. When you make policy that is good for the national currency that serves as the global reserve currency, it most oftentimes ends up hurting the other countries or many other countries around the world because of that. So we're going to talk about that and a few other things, and then we'll wrap this thing up. Let's start here. So CNBC posts a tweet here that says, Powell set to deliver profoundly consequential speech, changing how the Fed views inflation. You know, it was not that long ago they said there wasn't a problem, but now he's about to deliver a profoundly consequential speech. A consequential speech. Okay. One that's going to have huge consequences. Got it. One has to wonder if they're not going to do something very different than what Paul Volcker did back in, what was it, the 80s, I believe, when they raised interest rates to combat hyperinflation or fast-moving inflation. So we'll see what happens here, but we don't know. But it is certainly something to pay attention to. Oddly enough, in lieu of those remarks to come from Jerome Powell, we had back on the 18th, the IMF held a webinar where they discussed how to make an external adjustment to dominant currencies like the US dollar. An external adjustment to the exchange rate peg. If you don't understand what that is, that means what your dollar is worth valued against other trading pairs of other dollars throughout the world. And talking about an external adjustment to that. Yeah. Let's listen to Barry Eichengreen, who was on Blockstars with David Schwartz just not long ago, and now he's participating in this IMF discussion about dollar dominance. And let's listen to what he says here, and he remarks about the Triffin dilemma.
They're a tour de force in the sense that they contain theory and sophisticated empirical work, but also the new data set that Gita spoke of that a lot of us will be anxious to get our hands on. But the conclusion, to my mind, is depressing because it implies that monetary policy is less effective than we have traditionally thought. In a world where sterilized intervention doesn't do much, monetary policy and exchange rate movements go together. When you're at the zero lower bound, monetary policy works even more heavily by moving the exchange rate because it can't move the interest rate. And if it really is the case that you get less stimulus to exports and less oomph from monetary policy generally, I think it's incumbent on all of us to think about what to do instead. So is this project an argument for fiscal policy? That's depressing because fiscal policy is heavily politicized. Fiscal policy works with even longer lags typically than monetary policy. What do we need to do in terms of reforming our fiscal institutions if we're going to have to rely on them more heavily? And the second part of the question would be, what do we have to do to get out of this position of dollar dominance? Because it has the undesirable effect of weakening monetary policy. and it will run up sooner or later against the 21st century Triffin dilemma problem.
Wow. He says it right there in an IMF webinar. Now, like I said, this takes on a whole new tone, knowing that the IMF discussing the U.S. dollar dominance in the Triffin dilemma, and you wonder if the United States dollar will lose its global reserves currency status, or if it will just get an adjustment to its dollar strength against every other currency in the market. That's really the question here. And in light of Jerome Powell's profoundly consequential speech coming up with the Fed, we'll have to keep an eye on what those remarks will be. Now, throughout the rest of the world, we have a coalition of countries called BRICS, which is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Russia is calling on its fellow BRIC members and BRIC country members to dump the U.S. dollar in favor of trade in national currencies. Are you seeing a trend here? Because I know I am. Now, going on with that, you have to ask yourself, how would they make all of this happen? This is a video of Mickey B. Fresh and myself when he brought the IMF document that mentions RippleNet about 5 or 7 times throughout that document, and about how the Financial Stability Oversight Committee, or Council, which is a regulatory body connected to the Treasury, could designate something like RippleNet as systemically important. The reason I go to that from the BRICS news is because I think about the idea and the notion of a coalition of countries like BRICS dropping the dollar for usage and beginning to trade in national currencies and use an asset like XRP through a system like RippleNet to be able to make these trades and exchanges without having to really hold each other's sovereign currency. So that's interesting to me. So that goes to that. This is the FSOC page from the Treasury where it talks about financial market utility designations. This also cites in here different entities that have been deemed systemically important to financial market utility or market infrastructure. And some of these are the Clearinghouse Payments Company, the CLS Bank International, Chicago Mercantile Exchange, Depository Trust, and others. So, going from that, there's a comment that came out today from Marcus Treacher from Ripple. Shout out to Marcus. A move to the cloud brings big benefits to banks and financial institutions. Reduce cost, increase scalability, real-time updates. I share my thoughts about why now is the time to consider cloud deployment. Shout out to Marcus Treacher, very nice guy. Had a chance to meet him at Swell last year. And when I see that about cloud-based usage, I go right back to RippleNet, because RippleNet is a cloud-based service with the governance and the compliance built right into the system. Now, that is hugely remarkable to me, knowing that you have one of the members urging other countries inside of their coalition, BRICS, to dump using the dollar in favor of going to their currencies back and forth between each other. Knowing that the IMF has also taken a position to the point that they need to have webinars where they discuss the problem of the Triffin dilemma and the dominance of the U.S. dollar, and how to deal with the idea of making an external adjustment to the dollar's dominance with the exchange rate peg to other currencies. Not a small matter. And Powell set to deliver profound statements that are going to be consequential. I tell you, this is pretty remarkable to me. And then on top of that, just for fun, the DTCC virtual forum, Managing Collateral in the Post-Health Crisis World, called The Big Reboot, tomorrow, 9:30 a.m. at Singapore time. Now, that's interesting to me, the big reboot. And if that wasn't enough, the XRP calculator link doesn't work anymore. It's been taken down or disabled. Well, isn't that interesting? I find that very interesting. If you guys find another place that you can access the XRP calculator that was created by Robert Mitchnick and Susan Athey from Ripple, I wish you would share that with me so I could find out where the link is. I like to use that calculator from time to time. Okay, so things that make you go, Something else makes you go, is when, before I get out of here, guys, 7-day trial for 99 cents. I use many different layers to protect myself when I'm online. One of those layers is Pure VPN to help protect my anonymity while I'm online. As many other things that I use. This is one of them. I'm very happy with it. I like it. And I know a lot of people that have gotten it have told me the same thing, and they feel much better. You can get it for your computer and your phone. It is a really nice layer of protection there. So make sure you check that out as well. Links in the description and in the comment box. Guys, I'm going to get out of here. Hit the like and subscribe. Make sure to share with somebody you know. This is getting quite interesting. And what will Jerome Powell say? And will it fall in line with the narrative that we're starting to see from the IMF and BRICS about the dollar dominance being in question? And what will it mean for us here domestically in the States when it comes to inflation and or hyperinflation? All right, guys, that's going to do it for me. Hit the like and subscribe. Share with somebody you know. I'll catch you on the next one.